Hello and welcome to The Conversation. My name is Shannon Taylor, and I am the Executive Director of the Not Just Blacks and Jews in Conversation organization. And tonight we have a distinguished panel of hats. You'll see more hats tonight than you will on any other show. We have the Reverend James McLean holding up the center, and we have Barry Freedman on the left and David Haivri on the right. And don't get dissuaded. This is not just a religious show. This is a show that's going to be telling you all about Israel and America and so on. And in the meantime, I want to just tell you a little bit about Reverend McLean. He's here for the second time because we can't get enough of his music. Those of us who have written in on our website said one song was not enough. So that's all you're going to get tonight is one song. And his music for the victims of terror in Israel continues to be played. I hear now in Louisiana. What connection he thinks I have to Louisiana escapes me, but I hear it's playing there, and it certainly will be played at West Side functions in Yom HaShoah, and this Friday on our friend Joey Reynolds and WOR, and at coming functions. You can write to him, you can meet him in the Bronx or elsewhere, and the others represent AFSI, Americans for a Safe Israel. That'll be the day when we find a completely safe Israel. Nobody is totally safe anywhere, but we keep striving. And David Haivri is a publisher and a writer. And I have his most recent books, Reclaiming the Temple Mount, which is written by him as well as published, I believe. And that'll also be the day when we reclaim it. It'll happen, but not in my day. Nothing happens in my day. I think I've seen 3 lives already, but nothing really happens in those days. In my father's generation, they defeated the Nazis. They gave rebirth to Israel. America went on the moon. That happened in my day, and then we stopped doing it. And then also, my late departed dear Rabbi Maya Kahana, The Wit and Wisdom of Rabbi Maya Kahana, by Lenny Goldberg, just published by David Haivri, and I can attest to the fact that this was a satirical genius. People may remember Rabbi Kahana from, of course, the assassination that is now the linchpin of our guest Peter Lance's book, Triple Cross, and all other discussions of the events that led to the 9/11 tragedy. But I remember him as somebody of great humor and wit and satire, and somebody whose prophecies would have done very well had people listened to them and would have avoided a lot of the tragedies that we experience today. But this is a show for conversation, for entertainment, for humor, and song. Tonight we have that as well, but don't get used to it. We don't intend to spoil you. And now I'm turning the mic over to Barry Freedman of AFSI to introduce to you first David Haivri and then James McLean.
Thanks, Shannon. It's a pleasure to be here, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about AFSI before we get started. Americans for a Safe Israel is the organization that was started as the American branch of the Land of Israel movement. After the 1967 war, when the lands were won and Jerusalem was reunited, it became clear to people that when the land wasn't annexed by the State of Israel, it became clear that there might be issues in the future of giving up those lands. And so we have been working to prevent that for a long, long time, and we stay the course with that. We were against Oslo, and we were against the withdrawal from Gush Katif, and we're steadfast in our purpose. We have a website, afsi.org, and you're all welcome to come and see the website. We have some very good publications that are also on the internet. The Outpost comes out monthly, and I would advise all of you to take a look at it. We have some excellent writers. First, I'm going to introduce David Haivri. David, it's good to see you. And David's the chairman of Revava, which is the reviving, David, help me? Reviving Jewish National Pride and Values, Revava. And Revava is an important organization. How many years now have you been
Well, we've been active for a few years, and we've taken on different issues of Jewish national pride, especially the issue of the Temple Mount, which is the focus of my book, Reclaiming the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, which is a symbol of Jewish national pride.
It's been a symbol of Jewish national pride for a long time, the Temple Mount, hasn't it?
I would say for around 3,000 years.
3,000 years? Yeah, 3,000 years. But also in modern times, it's been a symbol.
We remember 40 years ago when the Israeli army took over the Temple Mount, and General Motagor went up and declared the Temple Mount is in our hands, which is a very moving and emotional statement, and brings pride to Jews when they think that place of where our temple stood in Jewish history for nearly 1,000 years has returned to our hands. That makes Jews proud. But unfortunately, there's still a situation where the Temple Mount is not in Jewish sovereignty, and that's one of the issues that we deal with in Revava.
The anniversary is coming up, in a short time, isn't it?
In June.
In June, right. The 40th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem, and of the taking of the Temple Mount.
That's right.
So it was 2,000 years more or less until that happened.
That's right. Nearly 2,000 years from the time that the Jews were exiled by the Romans and
right.
spread out, and the temple was destroyed, until the time that the Israeli army took back the Temple Mount in 1967.
Well, why is the Temple Mount such an important symbol of pride, Jewish pride?
Well, the Jerusalem is our capital. It's our eternal capital, and the area of the Temple Mount was bought by King David in order to establish the temple of God, and that more than anything else symbolizes the idea of return to the land of Israel and the Zionism, the symbolism of our temple and of returning to our national heritage.
And what's the situation now on the Temple Mount?
The situation as it stands now on the Temple Mount is that officially the Israelis control the Temple Mount, but truthfully it's the Arab, the Waqf, the Arab clergy who call the shots, and non-Muslims, Jews and Christians are only allowed to enter the Temple Mount for a few hours during the day. And even then, when they can enter as foreigners, as guests, and are not permitted to pray to God. Jews are not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount, and if they dare do move their lips or bow down, they could be arrested for that, which is, of course, outrageous.
Right.
Let me interject.
Yes.
I remember that when you were interviewed by Joey Reynolds, David, your position was very simply that you want Jews to have equal rights to pray as all other faiths on the Temple Mount. Now, I remember when I went when I studied at Hebrew University Law School, I went to the Temple Mount. I went up there. In those days, there was not an issue. Before Oslo, there was relative calm and peace. And I went up there with my Aunt Malka and one of my professors, and they tried to stop us with one person. And my Malka shoot that person away, and up I went, and I went to the mosques, and I went to the temple sites, and so on and so forth. Since Oslo, all the trouble has come into being. But the original position of Jewish authority was Jews are not supposed to be on the top of the Temple Mount for various reasons. What about that issue?
Well, historically, on the first few days that the Temple Mount was freed by the Israeli army, Rabbi Shlomo Goren, who was the chief rabbi of the army, and later he was the chief rabbi of the state of Israel, Rabbi Goren went up to the Temple Mount and started measuring out and the area and called on public Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount until the secular government of Israel, led by the Moshe Dayan, who was the Minister of Defense, demanded that Rabbi Goren cease all of his religious activities on the Temple Mount. And from that day, although the Israeli government controlled the Temple Mount, the Israeli government are really those who are forbidding Jews from praying there in order not to disturb the Muslims.
Now, there are also issues of excavation, Barry. Am I correct?
Absolutely, but I think David's more prepared to answer those questions. He's living in Israel, and he's very familiar with what's going on over there.
The issue of excavations in Israel is very interesting because Israeli law protects archaeological findings to an extent that if an individual who owns land starts building on his land and he discovers a piece of pottery, he is forced by law to cease his building and to carry out excavations in order to protect and save any historical findings on his land. And on the Temple Mount, the neglect by the Israeli government is incredible. The Muslims have dug out hundreds of truckloads of earth that they've dug out with heavy equipment, with bulldozers, and destroyed priceless historical findings that have to do with the first and second temple that stood on that area. And of course, all of that destruction that they're carrying out is in order to deny the existence, erase the existence of the Jewish temple on that location.
So the work you're doing is really important. I mean, just raising the awareness and raising Jewish pride about the centrality of the temple and all that it means is it's very important. I mean, today's a difficult time in Israel, spiritually and morally, and people need that kind of a message today, I would say.
I think that it's very important for Jews to have the national feeling of pride, to be proud that a Jew, to be proud that he's Jewish, to be proud of his heritage, and of course the issue of the destruction of the historical importance on the Temple Mount is an issue that should concern all people. I think that every individual should ask and demand explanations from representatives of the Israeli government. Why are Muslims being allowed to destroy historical artifacts on the Temple Mount? And why are non-Muslims forbidden religious freedoms in a country that claims to be a democracy?
We've had Helen Freedman and Charlie Bernhout, who have, of course, Israel Update on our show before, and they pioneered the network's cable on Israel television. And, of course, AFSI, Barry, I don't know how many years AFSI has been around, but it's been more than 30, and AFSI has a mission going to Israel in May. Am I correct?
Absolutely. We have a mission going in May. We go twice a year. We've been around for 35 years, 1971, and we have the most extraordinary trips to Israel, Shannon. We go to Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank. We used to go to Gush Katif, which was in Gaza. We go to the Golan Heights. We want to show people what Israel is really like and to get them to meet the people that are demonized in the media and see their wonderful communities and their beautiful children and to hear their words of faith. And I think it's an important mission, and I welcome everybody to join us. Again, you can go to our website at afsi.org, and you'll find our phone number there and our email address and a little bit about the upcoming trip. So please call or email us, and we'd be happy to handle that.
Barry, I'd like to point out that I live in Israel in Kfar Tapuach, which is in the so-called West Bank, and I've had the privilege of meeting the AFSI group visiting. And from my opinion, being in Israel and seeing the different groups of tourists that come to Israel, your group, the AFSI tour of Israel, is the most, not only economic, but the most hands-on experience in Israel, meeting real people who live in real towns and seeing firsthand exactly what goes on, things that you hear in the news. Most tourists who visit Israel go and see the sites, they see the wall in Masada and the museum. But the AFSI tour to Israel has got to be the most unique. I think that it's the best tour.
Thanks,
that goes
David.
on.
Yeah, we try to cut through all of the misrepresentation that goes on for political reasons to demonize the people. Everyone that goes is amazed, by the beauty of the land and by the beauty of the people, and it's just a great trip.
Let's hear it for the museums and the great sites that I go to.
No, go see that stuff also.
Wonderful hotels.
Go see that stuff also.
And all the great things that New York is famous. There it is in Israel, and that's why I go there. You think I would go there to sit in the sandlot and to visit the real people? I have enough of real people here. I'm not going to spend my time and go schlepping that heat and so on just to go see real people. I'm going to go see the beautiful things, the art and the culture and the museums.
There's great things to see also, Shannon, for sure.
Shannon, when I get back to Israel, I'll paste your picture around and I'll tell all the real people not to speak with you when you come to Israel.
And I'll have
No
a
real
better
people.
time. Keep them all away from me as well. Now let's get to the real star of this show, because he's a singer, he's a stylist, he's a composer, and he's actually come back a second time. We don't have too many people who want to come back and visit us a second time. And Barry, why don't you do the honors?
I want to introduce Reverend James McLean. James has been a friend of AFSI's now for about 4 years, and I want James to tell the story, but he's told it to me about how he got involved. Really, it was a young girl that was killed in a suicide bombing, and it really touched James' heart. And James got involved, and he's written songs, and he's reaching out, and I think he's doing a lot of great work, and we wish him tremendous success with his songs, which are becoming more and more popular. James, why don't you tell us a little about the story and sing us one of your tunes?
Yeah, thank God for being here tonight with my brothers. You know, Miss Helen Freedman, she opened up the doors of AFSI for me. I went to so many different organizations, and all of them told me the song was beautiful, but nobody opened their arms for me. And Miss Helen Freedman opened up her arms for me to come into the organization, and I just love her for that. And she's a great lady, and she's helped me so much. And I just thank God for being chosen to help the children of Israel. And I love what I'm doing. And this song came to me with a divine invention in it. And I think this song is going to be a great song for Israel. And everybody loved this song. All type of people love this song. And I want to get it through the four corners of the world to help the needy, the poor, the sick, the elderly. And this is a great song. It's called Children of Israel, God is on Your Side. And I wrote it because of the family, the Nemed family, that was killed in a suicide bombing back in the year 2002. And on the second day, the 4th, which was the second day they got killed, March 2nd, 2002, they got killed. And 2004, I received a song and a divine vision from the little girl that was in the newspaper. Now, I'm not asking everybody to believe that, but it happened. This little girl came into my mind while I was sitting at the subway station waiting for a train and reading the paper, and she came into my mind, and the Lord lifted me up in the spirit and gave me this song. And she taught me how to sing it. And it goes something like this. Singing, oh, Israel, God is on your side. You don't have to worry. You don't have to cry. Singing, oh, Israel, God is standing near. You don't have to worry. You don't have to fear. Way back in the old Bible days, God called Moses to walk in his ways. He said, Moses, go down to old Egypt land and tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. He said, I have heard their sad cry coming up to me morning, noon, and night, singing, oh, Israel, God is standing near. You don't have to worry, and you don't have to fear, singing, oh, Israel, God is standing by. You don't have to worry because God is on your side. Oh, yeah. Oh, Israel. Oh, God. Hallelujah. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
That was great.
Thank you, God. And that's a copyright song.
Well, no, James, I was about to take the copyright myself. For those of you who would like to see the CD to the copyright song, here you go. God is on your side. I should only hope one day that it should be true. You keep praying, And God, hopefully, you can't demand anything of God, but he certainly has been on the side of Israel, because one time or another the whole world has not been. And Israel's still there. And the black people are still here, and God's been on their side, because otherwise you wouldn't see the black people here. And Jews and blacks were still here, Hispanics and gays and so on, and the whole world's been after all these people. And one by one, we're all getting united together. And that's only to show that God is on everybody's side. And it's God is on the side, hopefully, of the oppressed and the victim when we're in the right. It's not just a question of being oppressed; it's a question of being oppressed by the unjust. And God is of justice and mercy.
God is a good God.
So, James,
Yes.
how did you meet Barry?
Well, I met Barry through Miss Helen, because I knew Miss Helen, and I used to go out on the streets with her and Mr. Herbert and Charlotte and all of them, and we used to go out on the street and do some demonstrations on the street. So I had met Barry.
You did demonstrations?
Yeah.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah, I went out there with signs and everything. Oh man, I had some good times out there.
Did you sing?
No, well, only one time I sang. When I first went out, the first time I went out to sing the song, and everybody loved it. Everybody loved it. But what really I felt good about was holding up the signs. You know, holding up the signs, man. You know, that was the greatest thing for me. You know, holding up the signs, saying that you know, this one's got to go and that one got to go. You know, and leave Israel alone. You know, and let Israel stay. You know, and I love that. You know, and I met a lot of brothers and sisters out there. You know. Some of them had the black suits on, and some of them had the long dresses on, and some of the little kids, beautiful little kids, they used to come around and hold my hands, and we used to, you know, just talk and laugh together, and they just loved me, man. I felt like family, you know, and I just want people to know out there, man, that, hey, Israel has one of the most beautiful histories that you ever could find. You can never find no other nation of people with the greatest history that Israel have, man. I tell you, I just love Israel with all my heart, and I'm here now on this mission to work for them. I've been doing this for 5 years, so you see, I'm not playing. I'm serious about this. So I'm ready to do it another 5, you know, because I just love Israel, you know.
James, you're not alone. There's a lot of Christian friends of Israel, right?
That's true. They're growing. They're growing.
I mean, enormous numbers. We're talking about, what would you say? How many?
Oh, thousands, way up, maybe 400,000, 500,000.
300,000 or 400,000.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I was in contact with some over in Chicago, some over in Detroit, and there's a lot of black people now working with Israel. A lot of black people. Well, you know, then you got the Ethiopians over there, you know,
Right,
so they're part of the lost tribes, you know. So it's just it's one big family, you know. And
I
we
would
got
say
to
there are
realize it.
millions and millions in the whole world. How few Jews are we? And we can't stand each other. And every few Jews that we are, we have hundreds of organizations.
We all over the place.
David could speak to how many demonstrations he's had, and how many fights he's had, and how many the years of strife and turmoil in Little Israel in the Warsaw Ghetto. The Jews were fighting each other and still holding off the Nazis longer than France did. But we got millions and millions of Christian friends who've seen the light and come to rescue our brothers and sisters, as James puts it.
Yeah, because
But
I
James,
love working with Israel.
Tell me, James, how do you be a musician and still tolerate Jews?
Well, I mean, I love Jews because I'm part of them, you know. We all part of that Jewish family, you know. If we look at it, I mean, Abraham was, you know, he was all over the place, you know. I mean, hey, come on. We all brothers and sisters, just like we are, you know, we all go back to one root, you know, which is God. So we got to love each other. That's the whole thing. Love each other with divine understanding, and we can all make it. You know, people say, well, I love this one, I love that one. But if it's not divine love, you're not going to understand the next person. You know?
This is the family that James was talking about. Middle East violence leaves 28 dead, family wiped out, the Daily News. And this goes back to March 4th, 2002. Now, David and Barry, catch us up to how many victims of terror on a weekly basis we're seeing in Israel today.
I can't answer that question. Maybe David can answer it. I mean, it's not nearly as bad as it was at one time, but unfortunately, you know, we've lost mostly everybody that lives in Israel has lost friends. David's lost family to terror, and it's something that touches everyone there. David, maybe you can answer the question about numbers and stuff, and tell them your own personal.
Numbers are in thousands and tens of thousands of people who have been, and much more than that, people who have been affected maimed. And when you hear on the news a terror attack, it makes a headline if people were actually murdered.
So they play it down.
But what about people who lost limbs or paralyzed? One of my neighbors, you're right, I lost family members and many close friends who were murdered by Arab terrorists in Israel. But how many people are alive and have become nothing? One of my neighbors was shot. He was a professional driver, drove kids to school and back, and his van was hit by a roadside ambush. He was shot in the arm and in the leg, and he became paralyzed, and he can no longer work, and he's reliant on others, and it's a very, very sad situation.
Also, it affects the whole country emotionally and spiritually. I mean, you're living in fear, not knowing what's going to happen, seeing that the government doesn't respond in a way that it should respond to protect the people. All of these things, they grate on the society. They wear down the society. I mean, it might be part of the reason why people are, said to be weary today in Israel.
I'm personally doing a lot of work with youth. I'm a youth director in our town in Kfar Tapuach, and I work with teenagers ranging from 13 to 19, boys and girls. And the terrorist situation, of course, is something that adds on to frustration and difficulties. Kids have difficulties growing up wherever they are in every different community in the world. But if you add on the frustration of living in a place where the government doesn't show its responsibility for the well-being of the people, of course that adds on to their difficulties growing up.
That's enormously painful. I mean, you feel like you've been abandoned, or that you're not, you're made to feel worthless, almost. When you have a government that just says, I remember Yitzhak Rabin saying sacrifices for peace. After the suicide bombings, he would say that we have to go on with the peace process. These are sacrifices for peace. And I remember being horrified every time I would hear that.
That is a horrible statement. I pray that the Jewish people pick up on James's message that God is on our side, and start believing that and acting in such a way, acting according to our heritage, according to the law of the Torah, and feeling and believing and living according to that understanding that God is on our side, and we don't have to fear
time is not on our side, and we have about 20 seconds left. I also note that in Gush Katif we lost our whole organic crop market, and you're involved with that as an agriculturist and a publisher. Thank you all.